You are muted if you are talking.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Inshallah, you will find lots of barakah, endless blessings, and the source of the blessings, inshallah, in this month of Ramadan, when we remember again that even in our homes, we are guests. But of this very generous, very merciful, very loving host, our Rabb, our Maker, our Sustainer, our Provider. How about we start with a contemplation on Alhamdulillah and staying with that feeling of gratitude. Let's make it 2 minutes. I know we just prayed not long ago, and you did, inshallah, your assignment of staying in that gratitude, which is also the realizing the gist and the essence of the salat, the prayer, is that sense of gratitude that connects us directly to the source of all the most beautiful names, of all that we long for, or all that we truly need, and not what we think we need. So this gratitude is also the gist of all worship, actually. All worship is to sustain and maintain and cultivate that state of being grateful, which is only truly possible when we are aware, or to the extent that we are aware of our ubudiyya, our being totally dependent on the sustaining of our merciful Rabb, sustainer and host, and being totally taken care of guests. Taking care of, I don't mean only the place we are staying in and the food, but everything. We need food inwardly before we need it outwardly, or maybe together. So Bismillah, shall we do like 2 minutes, inshallah? So we are focusing on feeling the gratitude, feeling it everywhere, and just staying with it. And we say Alhamdulillah, and so now Alhamdulillah is connected to that feeling of gratitude. So whenever we say Alhamdulillah, inshallah, in our daily life, it won't be just a word, but it will remind us of a state of being in awe, in prostration, in total gratitude, in recognition of the greatness of the providing, the sustaining that we are being gifted with constantly, actually. Bismillah. I'll put the... Okay, so I'm putting the timer for 2 minutes. Bismillah. Started. Assalamu alaikum. So I think we stopped at the sixth point, right?
Yes, 6 point is long.
We did Allahu Akbar, God is most great. What wonders God has willed, mashallah. And then Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah. Come and look at this, hasten to the prayers and to prosperity. A call to prayer. After realizing all this, we are called to prayer. Normally, and the way we are created, the more we realize the gifts, the endless gifts, the gifts that we can't count if we wanted, as we are told in the Quran, the more we are created with to respond with appreciation, and we want to express that appreciation, that gratitude. And we are taught how to express it. And the way we are taught how to express it is not for God, in the sense that God needs it to be done in that particular way. Like some people say, why do I need to pray? I can just be grateful. No, I need it. We need it. Not only the form of the salah, the prayers, we need that. It's a form, it's a type of training, a type of cultivating that gratitude, grounding it, because we need that grounding, because it's not only being grateful, but to whom and for what we are grateful is itself a healing, a message that is healing for us. Suddenly, we are not alien in this world. We are not orphans. We are not without any roots. We belong, and we belong to Him who has everything in His hand, who has control over everything. And that's it's a very deep existential need that we have, that promise that we feel suddenly. It's like someone who thought he was an orphan, suddenly he finds out that he has a family that is very generous, very loving, very compassionate, very supporting, validating, and has the means to support and validate that person. Can you imagine suddenly the joy and the peace and the fulfillment? Exactly what is being cultivated within us through the prayer, and especially we talked about it in the beginning a little bit in the past, how the Imam Nursi talks about it when he talks about the salat, the namaz, that it has all the forms of worship. Even the body is involved. So we recite, and we are in the presence of God. So the soul, the ruh is involved, the heart is involved, all the senses, the bodily senses are involved, and even the body, because the body also needs to be trained, because it's a servant that is given to us for the aim of finding who we are and fulfilling our purpose on earth. But often when we are disconnected, when we forget about our connection to our Rabb, even when we are not denying, when we are disconnected does not mean we are denying. It just means that we are not aware. And so what happens, the body, instead of being a servant, it starts ruling us, and we start confusing our true physical needs, like a need for breathing air and water, for instance, with some some desires or some addictions, and we start confusing them, and we say, this is my need, and we run after it. And that attitude is really showing that we are living at the level of the body and physical desires that pulls us down. Why? Because when we are at that level, it means we're seeking fulfillment from other created beings. And so we are relating to the world at a horizontal level. And that's the definition of shirk. Now, shirk is not because God said, no shirk, therefore shirk is bad. No, shirk is bad, therefore. That's why Allah said, stay away from it. Why it is bad? Because it's a delusion. And we lose. When we are in a state of shirk, there will be no fulfillment in this world, because nothing can fulfill our desires. They are created like us. And the worst is we lose in the eternal hereafter. Can you imagine? That's why there is this, again and again, we are told, be careful, no shirk, you need tawheed. You need to practice tawheed. You need to realize that all the seeming horizontal relationships that we have with the world are totally delusional. And the typical example that I give, because it's easy to understand, is if I imagine that my phone is actually in direct contact with all my friends and all the numbers that are on in my contact list. Because, and I think I have a very pragmatic way of demonstrating it. Look, I call this number, it responds. But someone will just, who knows more, will just laugh at me. What are you doing? Say, don't you know that if you were not connected to the satellite that connects you to all these numbers or these people, you won't be able to connect them. This phone, this piece of whatever, this thing, cannot function without a whole system behind it. And so it is my relationship with water, with anything in the world, only exists by means of vertical relationship to Rabbul Alameen. This is the whole world, who has control over everything. And so when the more we go out of that delusion, the more we are consciously aware of who our Rabb is, the more we will automatically go out of that delusion. And the salat is a very effective means to remind us of that situation and cultivate it in us and ground that knowingness, that belief, that iman in us, so that it becomes a state of ihsan, a state of living in the presence of God. Live, it means being totally aware of the vertical connection of everything. So things are not directly connected to me, but through him. And that makes it so much easier, because otherwise we'd be like lost and confused. How can we control all these things? There's so many things. There is a world of plurality is very painful for the human soul. And suddenly there is all that plurality points to one, and we prostrate to one only, and he has the power to control everything. That is the ultimate healing, the ultimate fulfillment, the ultimate joy and peace that we seek, inshallah, in this world and in the next. So shall we get back to the text, inshallah?
Yes, inshallah. So these connections have been are being made in the text between our neediness and then the generosity, abundance we see in the world. We receive our weakness, and then he refers to the glory, perfection, majesty in the mirrors of beings. So I think one thing from our reading last time is that a part of me is really excited, and it really changes the way I approach the prayer. I say, well, this is a very serious business, and here I am to put forth my ode of love and the gratitude to my creator. And from another side, it feels like, well, this is so serious business, and it to think that now I'm going to pray and just do what I'm supposed to do, because there's a habit that has developed over time doing this regularly. So then it's just something you finish and you do it and you finish. And it can't be done that way. And so sometimes I get a little bit of despair. I look at the prayer as like, wow, this is how you pray. The prayer is all of these meanings, and then you realize that to really pray, even in the kind of most basic, meaningful way, you need to be living differently. That you can't just switch into gratitude mode, or if you can't just. I don't know how to put it in a way that doesn't sound like despair. I don't want to put it that way. I want to more say that it is a serious business, and sometimes it feels like, how can we, well, I guess it does sound a bit despaired, how can we live in a way that 5 times a day that we have this mindfulness and gratitude, and
but the prayer is like the exam time. If I enter the exam and I can't answer the questions, there are 2 ways of responding. Either, oh, I can't do it, but we don't have that option here. Go back and say, oh, I didn't do my homework properly. I have to. So it's like a thermometer. It's telling us what we're doing with our life. So actually, from another perspective, it is very compassionate of our Rabb that we have this thermometer, this check. We can check where we are in the scale of Ubudiyya. And what is hope, what gives hope is that however much, whatever the past is, it does not condition and determine my choice now, because choice is totally free. That's what it means. It seems to us that I'm doing this because like it's a habit, but that's not how Ubudiyya works, because Ubudiyya is supposed to be purposeful, intentional, and so I need to make that intention to choose to live consciously. That's my part, and I do the part to prepare for it, and I expect or wait and ask help. And that's exactly what we do in the prayer, actually. So from one perspective, this is how I see it, how I understand it from Imam Nursi says, the prayer is like, it can be like a seed, like sometimes it can be like a tree with fruits. It depends where you are in your journey, but never let go of the seed, because without the seed, you can't grow anything. So the salat itself is the seed, we have to hang on to it. So from one perspective, it is reminding us, or it is like a mirror of where we are in our journey. From another one, it itself is also, it is the moment where it's not, from one the exam metaphor is not totally applicable to the prayer, because it is the time where I ask for help. So it's not only where I am, I can see where I'm standing, how I'm performing, and wherever I am, there is always more. And we are created with that desire for more, to be closer to the truth, to be fulfilled even more, because it wants to fulfill. That's how the fitra is created. And so our asking for help will be more earnest, we will feel it more, we'll be more sincere, because one thing that inshallah will resolve the despair there. There would be despair if ubudiyya, if worshipping, and that's a state of worshipness, was about I doing things, I being the perfect worshipper. But that's not how it is. What it is the worshipper is the one who realizes that I doesn't do. I is only a receiver. It's only a mirror to the beautiful divine names. So once we realize that, it becomes much easier, because it's not about efforting. It's not about exerting lots of efforts to be better and better, but it is about letting go of the delusions, accepting the reality that I don't have anything from me. This is who I am. I cannot even solve this. That's my ubudiyya. When I accept it and let go of my pretensions and my false claims and my delusions about who I am, even as abd. I am the best abd, I perform the best salah. That's totally contradictory with the spirit of ubudiyya. So when I realize that, it becomes, there is no despair alternative, because the more I realize that, I say, yes, this is it. This is who you are, Yamina. This is who you are. This is who we are. That's what abd is. So ask even more earnestly, more sincerely, with more hunger, more need for help. Appreciate what you have been given, because they are not from me, and ask for more help. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. We worship only you, and we ask for help from only you, which we talked about last week, remember? Sarah also had shared her reflections of إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
Yes, and you know, as we had in a retreat a while back, some years ago, we worked on the feeling of regret and how it is again a sign, and it again brings us to a crossroads. You can have that regret and then, you know, pull down with it and be disappointed and be in despair, or take that guilt as an invitation to say, I'm sorry, and ask for forgiveness, and be open to change. So I guess that's partly what that's partly what it was also, that to look at all those prayers that you know I've been doing, and then looking back on them, it's like, whoa, you know, are you bearing witness and glorifying and admitting your weakness and neediness and turning to God in this wonder and awe, and then, well, maybe not, and then that guilt can be transformed. It is a messenger, it has a message, and then also initially it looks like, whoa, you know, how am I going to have this kind of encounter in salah? But actually it makes salah easier in a way, because it's harder to do it, and that's why we do it to get over with it when it doesn't have much meaning. Like, you know, I have to do this because I have to do this. That's part of me being a surrenderer. I have to do this. Shifting from that to I have to do this and it's great. You know, it not in the sense of feel good great, in the sense of it's something meaningful. I am glorifying, I'm seeking help, I am turning to the eternal one. I am not being suffocated in this endless uh, passing world, constantly flowing. There is a way out. So um, so in that sense, actually, it's harder to put it in a to-do list, get done with it, but it's also, you don't need to put it that way anyway, because it's more meaningful uh, this way, inshallah. Inshallah. And then, as you said, it connects the entire life. So then to be able to do those witnessing and glorification and declaration, I start, hopefully, inshallah, living the life differently and seeing the beautiful names of God in it and through me and so on.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. So with that, we can come back to maybe reading.
Inshallah, yes.
Natila says, I get to pray instead of I have to pray. That's a nice way of phrasing it. Thank you. I get to pray. So with that, and we can start just from here maybe, then they respond appreciatively, and then continue onwards. We talked about it a bit already, and then finish this.
I mean, page 138.
What would that be in pages?
Did you say it starts?
I'm looking at it from the screen, but I can check the page number. 1 second. In Risale, the page number would be.
Looks like it's 137 here.
158. Yeah.
158, okay.
Yeah, that's the next page. So, and the third paragraph, then they responded appreciatively. And then from there on, we can read again. And
Inshallah.
inshallah. So any volunteers for reading? A volunteer, we need one.
Sarah should volunteer. I love her voice.
Inshallah. Okay. Isra, shall I read from the screen or from the Risale? Is that okay, or do you prefer the Risale? Okay.
Bismillah, just start.
Yeah, here, from the start here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then they responded appreciatively to the all-glorious Maker's displaying the subtleties and wonders of his antique art in the exhibition of creatures, exclaiming, "What wonders God has willed!" Observing and applauding them, they declared, "How beautifully they have been made! What blessings God has bestowed!" Holding everyone witness, they said in wonder, "Come, look at these. Hasten to the prayers and to prosperity." And they responded with submission and obedience to the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity's proclamation of the sovereignty of his dominicality in every corner of the universe, and the manifestation of his unity, declaring, "We hear and we obey." They affirmed his unity. Then, before the manifestation of the Godhead of that sustainer of all the worlds, they responded with worship and humble veneration, which consists of proclaiming their poverty within need, and with the prescribed prayers, which are the summary of worship. Thus, through performing their various duties of worship in the mighty mosque, known as the abode of this world, they carried out the obligations and duties of their lives and assumed the finest of forms, ahsan al-taqweem. They ascended to a rank above all creatures by which, through the auspiciousness of belief and assurance, and the trust, they became trustworthy vicegerents of God on the earth. And after this field of trial and place of examination, their munificent sustainer invited them to eternal happiness in recompense for their belief, and to the abode of peace in reward for their adhering to his religion of Islam. There he bestowed on them, out of his mercy, bounties so dazzling that no eye has seen them, nor ear had heard them, nor have they occurred to the heart of man. And so he does bestow these on them, and he gave them eternity and everlasting life. For the desirous, mirror-bearing lovers of an eternal, abiding beauty who gaze upon it will certainly not perish, but will go to eternity. The final stay of the Quran students is thus: may Almighty God include us among them. Ameen. As for the other group, the sinners and the wicked, when they entered the palace of this world at the age of discretion, they responded with unbelief to all of the evidences of divine unity, and with ingratitude towards all the bounties, and by accusing all creatures of being valueless, insulted them in an unbelieving manner. And since they rejected and denied all the manifestations of the divine names, they committed a boundless crime in a short time and became deserving of endless punishment. For the capital of life and man's faculties were given to him for the duties mentioned above. O my senseless soul and foolish friend, do you suppose your life's duty is restricted to following the good life according to the requisites of civilization? And if you will excuse the expression, to gratifying the physical appetites, do you suppose the sole aim of the delicate and subtle senses, the sensitive faculties and members, the well-ordered limbs and systems, the inquisitive feelings and senses included in the machine of your life, is restricted to satisfying the low desires of the base soul in this fleeting life? God forbid. There are two main aims in their creation and inclusion in your essential being.
Shall we pause here? Dr. Yamina, I think it's going to go into...
Yeah, now it's going to go for the aim in the creation of all these senses.
Before we go to that, just briefly, if anybody would like to share anything that attracts your attention, or anything, any questions that come to you about this part.
I guess I'll just share what came to me. Just before this halakha, I got the news of another young brother, 33 years old, who passed away. And he was the youngest, living alone with his mother, and his father had passed away 6 years ago. And I just saw my brother in that, and I was just I found myself sinking in sadness since the morning, and I didn't get to do the morning homework, so I was not grounded. And reading this, immediately the reminder comes that that feeling is not mine to own. And the minute that I owned it, I found myself sinking. So the very first paragraph talks about finding that poverty and channeling it through prayer as a means of elevation, as a means of finding the eternal source. And that eternal source, immediately we see endless bounties and infinite love that was not present whenever we own any feeling. And so it just immediately, I felt like a transferal or just an immediate change or light, really, like Dr. Yamina says, from shining light on something that was just black and dark and just not being able to see, that truly everything is in the hands of a being, and using the universe as almost like the easiest place to witness. Everything is being taken care of, and this same being is the one that invites us to witness our poverty and channel it through prayer so that we can rise not only in this world, but stay elevated and then find that transferal eternally.
When you said, Sarah, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un first, may Allah have mercy on him and your brother and all our beloved ones, and the ones we know and the ones we don't know, and those who passed in the past and those who will pass in the future, inshallah. May Allah have mercy upon all of them and all of us. Al-ahya minhum wal-amwat. You said when we own our feelings, it means we are having a pre-judgment. We already take it for granted that we know what that feeling is. We are already judging it, understanding it, perceiving it in a certain way, and it is parallel. It is a projection of our self-perception. The moment we disconnect with who we truly are as abd, and therefore we are not aware of our connection with our Rabb, that moment we see everything in that way as disconnected and separate from their source, from their Rabb, from their sustainer. And so it is the same with the feeling. It seems like it is horizontal. Something happened out there, and this is how I am feeling about it. And so we get drowned into that sadness because we are not listening to its true message. When we recall that we are abd, it means right now I do not exist separately and independently of my Rabb. So it is for everything. So it is for the sadness, the grief. It's not like I am the source of that sadness of grief. I find them there. And they came there. That's what an ayah is. It's a messenger with a message from above, from beyond, from alim al-ghaib, from my sustainer. And it's telling me something about what's going on. For instance, like Ibrahim alayhi salam says, La uhibbul afilin, I do not like what is passing. So sadness is telling me lots of things about the reality of life, the reality of my life, and the purpose of my life. So if I don't like this, what do I need? And so it makes me turn back to my Rabb for asking for help, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, and seeking that eternal realm, because that sadness is telling me this is not what you want, because the first impression is as if the person disappeared and it's the end. And we don't want it to be the end, because if it's the end, it becomes meaningless, no purpose, no meaning. Then why should we even bother about anything? And that misperception is in deep contradiction with our deep needs and our soul's longings. And so when we recognize it as a messenger, then we recognize that, yes, that contradiction is making me so sad, but is it true? If it is from me, it could be. It could have no meaning. But if it is coming I find it in me. And when we pause, it's not from me, because actually we don't want to linger in that sadness. It's too much to carry. It becomes a burden. And when we realize what it is, suddenly it starts speaking to us, and we realize that it's not from us, it's coming from somewhere, has a message, and it makes sense, and everything starts falling into place. And even while we are sad at one level, at a deeper level, the meaning of the sadness is soothing, is peaceful, is grounding, is reconnecting to the purpose and meaning over all purpose, the true purpose and meaning of life and of everything else. And so although we are made to dislike death, we are at peace. We become at peace with it, inshallah.
This reminded me proclaiming their poverty. That
Yes.
reminded me of a poem that you shared in a previous session from Rumi, and I'm going to put it here, just a bit of it. He says, "Then you pray the prayer that is the essence of every ritual. God, I have no hope. I am torn to shreds. You are my first and last and only refuge." Don't do daily prayers like a bird pecking, moving its head up and down. Prayer is an egg, hatch out the total helplessness inside. So it's not that we have a choice over whether we're going to be total helpless or not. Right? I mean, there's certain things we have a choice over. Am I going to make a big fuss over the fact that, I couldn't get the latest fashion? Yeah, I have a choice. I can, I can cry over it, or I can say, I choose to change the way I think about myself and defining myself with my fashion and so on. So there's certain things we can change, and then we may not be sad anymore because we realize it actually wrong to think that that's the source of my worth. But then there are certain things that there is nothing we can do about it. That total helplessness is what is highlighted here.
They call it existential because it's part of who we are. So
then, and then when that feeling comes, like that helplessness, we also got some sad news yesterday that a very elderly relative of ours, she's I think 80 plus, and she's been healthy, his old age, but then we learned that she can't walk anymore. Her muscles are not holding her anymore, and it was sad. And then we thought about how helpless we are. Like, what can you do for her? Even if you had the whole wealth or whole whatever you want, what could you give her walking? And then, or how could she, maybe if I was, and then I thought about, like, if I was in that situation, have a life and then long and happy, and then all of a sudden you can't walk. And then I said, like, it could happen to me tomorrow too. It doesn't have to be, after many years, but the thing is,
age necessarily.
Yeah, it's not with age at all. There are people who are in a younger age have that situation. But all of this, like all of this, we can talk about it, go into details, but when it comes is what Sarah said, it's total helplessness. That when I heard that event, or when we hear an event and we realize, like, whoa, life is passing, we have no way of holding on to things. That is total helplessness, as you say, existential crisis moment. And then we have a choice over how we respond to it. We don't have a choice whether we have it or not. Like, some people are totally helpless about death. We are not at all. We are all totally helpless about aging and death and transience and lots of things out of our control. And then what is interesting is that these teachers are talking about that helplessness, admitting it as a choice, and then is
making peace with it.
Yeah, making peace. And you say, well, one other thing is that people,
but it's not making peace. I will accept it. What we will make peace when we know its meaning,
and that's hatching out. It's like an egg. it's interesting. Rumi saying it's like an egg. Nursi saying it's like a seed. But in any, there's something to come out, to flourish out of this helplessness, and that's the essence of the prayer. To say that I am weak, I am poor, but but that's okay because I'm turning to you. Like that actually becomes my route to turn to you. As I'm helpless, I'm broke, I turn to you, and then that's the flourishing. You are the powerful, you are the eternal. One last thing, why do people fake crying? Kids do it, but sometimes adults do it too when they want attention. Sometimes people, or maybe even else, fake crying. Why would you want to fake crying? Because you know that when you fake crying, you will get sympathy. So even like, I don't mean we should fake, but in that faking, that's not appropriate to fake. But that is another clue that it's not necessarily bad to be crying, because then you can get favor, you can get attention, you can get sympathy. So why not with our total helplessness, that we're totally helpless? That's not necessarily bad. If you're in front of someone who's generous and powerful, and hatch it out, just proclaim your poverty. So that's really interesting, and thank you, Sarah, for sharing.
I also just wanted to add, like, proclaiming poverty. The word proclaiming is such a more empowering word, right? It's not like whispering poverty or crying my poverty. So when you said hatch out total helplessness, Isra, it's so beautiful, because hatching is another meaningful, positive word. It's something that's like blossoming. It's
meant to be. That's how it was meant to be. That's the purpose of the creation, right?
And it also seems like the poverty, like, so realizing that people are passing, and it's such a heart-wrenching reality for us, because it reminds us of this total helplessness, because really everything is completely out of our hands, and death is just the reminder that every single thing is totally out of our control. But then so it seems like a huge feeling of chaos arises, like a huge helplessness. But then I love the word proclaim or hatch out, because it's like with that huge feeling that literally it just landed on my chest, and I just sank and sank and sank all morning, like an anchor. And it's so funny that we use the word anchor, because the Quran now, or this guidance, is saying, let that sinking bring you to your knees, and let you then be anchored in proclaiming Subhana Rabbiyal A'la or Iyyaka na'budu. Like, channel that with a proclamation that's loud and powerful, that I admit that I have absolutely no authority or ability, and I know the one who does, and I can completely let go or float in that reality.
Mm-hmm. So it's more than accepting, because when we realize the meaning of what it is, then not only we accept it and make peace with it, but the proclaiming is like, when you have a ship with the anchor, and suddenly you throw the anchor, that's the proclaiming, and suddenly you are grounded in that connection to إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين, because now truly you realize this is the meaning of that poverty, that faqr and ajz that we are created with. This is how we used to say about the needs being the key to unlocking the treasures of the most beautiful names. And that helplessness, that poverty, that faqr. When we realize what it is truly, then it becomes our asset, because it feels more like a liability until we know that it is our asset. It is what connects us to our Rabb. It is what grounds us in seeking his help and realizing and appreciating and tasting his help and his beautiful divine names. So yeah, proclaiming is a nice word.
I have a question that just came. So in this state, I can feel the transformation into إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين, and this hatching out of the total helplessness, but at the same time I do not feel like with this particular moment of feeling this situation that happened today, gratitude does not come to mind as an anchoring thing, but maybe peace. And I'm just wondering if that's okay.
The more you will stay in peace, you stay in peace, the more you will be in retrospective when you look at the bigger picture, from being drowned into helplessness to proclaiming the helplessness. Oh, and the resulting grounding peace and sakina, that feeling, that calm, that connectedness, that is something that makes us, that we appreciate, that makes us very grateful.
Yeah.
And just to add one thing about this proclaiming and hatching out, it became a tafsir of wasjud waqtarib, that verse that says, prostrate and come closer.
Yeah. It's like the proclaiming is when we make the sajda, we are proclaiming our helplessness, our poverty, our need. That's total, sajda is total helplessness. But it's not a helplessness in despair, it's a helplessness with proclamation. This is the best thing. This is what makes us, it says before, higher than other creatures. It's being conscious of this total helplessness. And that's what in sajda, that's why they say in sajda you are closest to God. Of course, if we are not only in sajda in physically, but emotionally, with our heart and soul and our whole being, then if we do that, then the physical sajda helps, not only nurtures that state, but it also protects that state. It's like the fruit and it's the skin of the fruit when it's still alive in the tree. The skin is not something, you say the skin is not important, you throw it out. Not when it is in the tree. The skin helps nourish the fruit and protect it to grow. And that's how the physical form of our worship is so important. And being physically in sajda, cultivate that proclaiming our ajz and faqr and our poverty within need, inshallah. So thank you, yeah. This should waqtarib. And you see, it is a command, it is an amr. Prostrate and be close to God. So there is a mystery, as they say, sir, a secret, a mystery in prostration. But prostration, physical and emotional and soul felt prostration. It's the proclaiming of our poverty, is the proclaiming of his sovereignty.
I like that, Yamina. I like the contrast. The proclaiming of our poverty is the proclaiming of his sovereignty. That's why the like ubudiyya, is the connection for rububiyya. So I love that sentence. Thank you.
Imam Nursi says it is the conscious mirror to rububiyya. You can only know your Rabb to the extent in or through the mirror of your own ubudiyya, of your own faqr and ajz, your own poverty and neediness and helplessness and powerlessness. And suddenly The powerlessness is not something that we run, we shun away, we avoid, and it's not painful anymore. Because when it has no meaning, when it's only me and my powerlessness and helplessness, it's like Imam Nursi uses the imagery of, it's like being stuck in powerlessness and neediness. And it's like you can't go out of it. It's very painful. And then suddenly you realize that no, it's coming through me. And it is a message, it is an invitation, it is trying to lift me up if I only can listen to it. And when I listen to it, it is a messenger that lifts me up and connects me to the source of everything. So we need just to let go of our illusions and delusions and false assumptions and beliefs that we are even unaware of. And the more we are aware, the more we fill ourselves with the true perception, then those misperceptions starts fading away, inshallah. He talks in the paragraph before, they responded with submission and obedience to, let's say, God's proclamation of the sovereignty of his rububiyyah, dominicality, in every corner of the universe. So it's like first they submit and obey. The attitude here is we hear and we obey because wherever we turn, we see your rububiyyah. We see you are in charge. So it's in the afaq, in the outer world, and then comes within the manifestation of uluhiyya, Godhead, of that Rabb of all the worlds, Rabbul Alameen. They responded with worship and humble veneration, which consists of proclaiming their poverty within need, and with the prescribed prayers, the salat, which are the summary of worship. So once they see the rububiyyah in the outer world, my body is part of the outer world because I can look at it, then it becomes the inner. The inner is the helplessness, the powerlessness, all those feeling, the sadness, the grief. I recognize the rububiyyah there as well, that is something that is just like everything else in the world is proclaiming his rububiyyah and proclaiming his unity and witnessing to divine unity. I will start looking inside and find out that they are performing the same proclamations, testifying to the same truth. And that's why we start proclaiming our helplessness. And it becomes like, instead of liability, it's actually an asset, and not only an asset, it's our best asset. It's what makes us human being. That's what makes us closer to God. That's what makes us the addressee, the special, as Alia says, VIP guests of this munificent, this generous, this compassionate host. Subhanallah. What we thought was the worst becomes the best. And that's how they start performing. With that consciousness, with that state of being, everything we do will become an act of worship, because it will be an act of enacting our ubudiyyah and therefore recognizing and proclaiming his rububiyyah and mirroring it. So we'll be acting in his name and proclaiming his names and not appropriating them for ourselves. And therefore the whole world will be perceived, we will perceive that it's a mosque. It's a mosque in English, it doesn't have, in Arabic, it's masjid. It means it's a place of sujood, a place of sajda, a place of prostration. Everything is prostrating, everything is proclaiming their helplessness. Water is helpless and it's proclaiming it. It's not pretending that it's doing anything. It's only human being that can pretend falsely to be doing anything and try to hide their helplessness and proclaim something else at their own detriment. So when we realize, when we get rid of our misperceptions, when we proclaim our helplessness, when we are in a state of sajda, then we realize that the world is a masjid, is a state of sajda where everything is prostrating to God and proclaiming their poverty and their helplessness. And that's when they assumed the finest of forms, أحسن تقويم, which is the fulfilling the purpose of our creation. That's what we were created for. And they ascended to a rank above all creatures, by which, through the auspiciousness of belief of Iman and the assurance and the trust, amana, because when we prostrate, it means the helplessness is truly the amana, but we were misusing it and saying, I do, I. Helplessness is the mirror to the most beautiful names, but we were trying to steal the ownership on the manifestation, the reflection of the names of God in the mirror, and say it's me, it's my doing, it's my giving, trying to boost our ego through that. And of course, deep down we know it's not true. That's why it's never fulfilling. Deep down we know it's not true. We know we are truly we are lying. We know that we are truly helpless in front of death, for instance, and death is every time, every moment, it's always there, lurking in the shadows. I cannot guarantee that I can deal with it, or death will never reach me. So death is not only death, the physical of life, but the death of anything, the end of everything, transience. Everything is passing, every moment is passing. So that trust, when we have Iman, there is Aman. Aman is feeling safe and secure and at peace. And the Amana, we would have fulfilled the Amana. It means the Amana, the trust that is given to us, that sense of I, that I take as I am doing, but actually I'm not doing anything, I'm only receiving. We can give it back to the true I. There is only one that can say I, and that's our Rabb. And they become trustworthy Khalifa, vicegerent of God. Now they are vicegerent, now they can represent God on earth because they act in his name, and they are trustworthy, because most of the time we're not trustworthy. We get it from him and we pretend it's from us. I get an idea, I say, this is my thought. I help someone and I say, how come now you're not grateful to me? Yeah, that person is ungrateful. We don't like ingratitude, but it's not about me. It's about being grateful to God. And when they are grateful to God, they will be grateful to other people too. But we make it into a business about me and you, as if I am the source of the helping, the source of anything. And there is a fine line there. And
the trust there is making a direct reference to the Quranic, famous Quranic passage in which God offers the trust,
yeah,
to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they say no, they were afraid to take it on, and human being took it on.
Except human being who took it on.
Yeah, and then it goes on to say that human being is ignorant and unjust. And elsewhere, Imam Nursi glosses it as saying that when we don't live up to the aman, when we appropriate the trust and we pretend that those tools given to us is ours, then we become ignorant and very foolish and unjust. But it isn't regretting that we took the amana. It's more like
misusing
the amana that's being. Well, it's a whole lesson on its own. That whole verse is.
Yeah, inshallah. When we finish this, we can do that because it's a key.
Inshallah. So maybe that could be the next.
Inshallah.
And so a lot of important things are here. Amana, being Khalifa, right? God.
And not word Khalifa. Because potentially we are all created as Khalifa, but we don't always live up to that.
Yeah. So the path to living up to this is to go through this journey of outer and inner discovery of beautiful names of God, and then proclaiming poverty and so on. Inshallah we can be in that path. And it talks about heaven. And then there's a contrast. Alia, did you want to say something? There is a contrast.
No, thanks.
Okay. There's a contrast between this whole attitude and the attitude of disbelief. And they enter this guest house's palace.
So in the Quran, often it's going to be, we're told about one state and then the other state, because we also, the whole thing is, we may imagine that there is a neutral point where we say, okay, I don't care about all these nice things, just leave me alone. There is no such option. Leave me alone. When you are not following this, when you are not accepting the reality, you are denying it. When we are denying the reality, there are consequences that are unbearable, that are very heavy consequences. So we have to be told clearly what the situation is, so we know what we are choosing when we are choosing. Because we are always choosing, either consciously or unconsciously. And so we may say, okay, it looks very nice, but I'm not bothered. Sometimes people can have that stubbornness that they still resist. And so we are told, when you don't follow this path of bliss and peace, then you don't stay where you are. The only other alternative is suffering and pain. And so now we have for some people, that's what works. They are so stubborn. And for some, even that won't work, because they will just either dismiss it or avoid remembering it. Just say, okay, and go back to like what was it? Ostrich, putting our head in the sand of worldliness and not refusing to see the reality.
And it's nicely specific. It's saying they responded with unbelief to all the evidences of divine unity, tawheed, and ingratitude towards all the blessings.
Because even if the person is grateful, they are grateful for the things, to the things.
Yeah.
And that's the best. And they won't be grateful for everything, because they will only be grateful for things that they like. And this is not how life is. So when we choose that path, we'll be miserable in this life because we're not fulfilling the purpose of our creation. So there is always unfulfillment, and everyone is always motivated by trying to find fulfillment, but there is no fulfillment in the passing things that cannot fulfill you. And so there will be misery, even in wealth, even in success, achievements and things. There will be always deep down that unfulfillment. And then, of course, in Akhirah it will be worse, because not because you will be aware, we will be aware of the situation. Here we try to not confront the reality. We try to ignore it. So it feels deep down, there is an uneasiness and a discomfort, but we are always trying to keeping ourselves busy. There will be no such an option in Akhirah. And there will be again also the consciousness, the knowingness that this is it. We lost the opportunity to go back to the truth. So it's not about what we want to choose, as Isra mentioned in the very beginning, but it's the helplessness and the reality of Tawheed, and the reality of there are two paths, and these two paths have consequences in eternity that bear eternal results. It's not it's not up to us. That's the reality. We either accept it or deny it.
I have a question, Sister Yamina, about Khalifa. I remember from our retreat, we went through this beautiful concept of two sides of the same coin being abd, the one that is completely aware of his vulnerability and able to proclaim that vulnerability. And then the opposite side of the same coin is this concept of vicegerent or Khalifa, which is mirroring the beautiful names of God and not owning them, but observing them flowing through his being. And I'm just wondering, so my question is like, are we kind of existing either on one side or the other depending on the moment? So today I'm observing myself being at peace and in surrender of my helplessness because of this new reminder of death of such a young person during such a trying time. And so I don't feel like the vicegerent Khalifa part, but I do feel the hatching, or, you know, the abdness of myself, and at peace with that. So is it almost like we're in a state of being that's either one or the other?
No, it's not one or the other, because being both sides, it means they coexist. It's just how we perceive them. When we are one, we are the other, but we may not be aware. If we are abd, then when we are acting as Khalifa. Let's not make the terminology an issue. Whether I call it Khalifa or not, if I am truly abd, if I'm truly proclaiming my helplessness, then whatever I do, inner and outer, I am aware that I am a receiver, I am being a channel to the most beautiful names of God. And so when I'm acting, like for instance, in the world, I am not acting in my name, I'm not promoting myself. Like the the best examples are the prophets, the messengers of God, peace be upon them, alayhim salam. They act in the name of God. They call to God. They don't call unto themselves. They're not looking for some benefits, worldly benefits from themselves. Let's start a new kingdom or something like that. It's all about akhirah. It's all about God. It's all about justice. It's all about upholding the beautiful names of God on earth. It's all about peace. It's all about helping others, especially in regard to their eternal life. So the two sides go together.
Example could be perhaps now that you're in this state of peace, Sarah, someone comes to you distraught and really anxious about a similar situation or the same event. And you can, as you are in that state of receiving peace and the peaceful surrender state, you find yourself in a situation you are actually giving good advice and consolation and helping this person actually shift out of her anxiety.
By becoming a channel to that peace.
of as-salam.
And that was, yeah.
I see. Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, you may not be totally aware of it, but the more you stay in that place, the more you will be at awe that how come all these words came through, all this peace and all that I shared, and you realize that what I shared was not from me, it was meant for that person, and actually I benefited from it as well. It was the risk of that person, and it became a risk to me as well, and we become at awe and in prostration at the beautiful names that are being channeled through us. And so we prostrate again, and we proclaim our helplessness again, and we proclaim our awe at the Rububiyyah and the beautiful names of God.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Sometimes without words, when you are at peace, the people around you calm down as well. And it's not like you are willing anything. We don't. We can't even will ourselves to be at peace unless we accept that reality and proclaim the more we proclaim our helplessness, the more peace is given unto us. And that peace can be so that it also benefits the people around us.
So true. Very beautiful.
And then I wonder if this time we can go into the parable, but for that we would need to rush through a bit. Is that okay? So then the contrast with what we discussed is unbelief, rejecting the evidences, ungrateful towards the blessings, and insulting other creatures, because we disconnect them from being signposts to the Eternal One into just some things just popped up and will pop off, and that's that. So this could be unpacked maybe, but maybe we can just leave it at that for now.
I like that. I liked when Sarah was reading that in doing that, you don't give full value for things. And Yamina, you always bring this point up, like the more you are aware as abd, the more everything has more value. So I really like that. Like those words, like actually, if you like, the more you are aware of your ubudiyyah, the more everything has far much more value than if you think of it as like, Mother Nature, as like causes, as like, just human beings, someone did something to me, then they become like really, really valuable.
Meaningless, valueless. They are not messengers anymore. It's like you have an ambassador from another country and you treat him like someone who is there, a servant.
And
he's saying, I am the ambassador of this country. You are, when we are doing that, it's no, you say, but it just, I misunderstood. I didn't know he was the ambassador. Do you think the other country will feel that way? It's an insult to the whole country.
if
So
somebody says, yeah, I'm representing United States of America somewhere, you say this, and then the person says, there's no such country. And then you get offended, like, why?
I like that more. There's no such country.
so who are you? Like?
And you're offended, and the person can say, I'm not denying you are here. I love you, you are here. I'm just saying that country doesn't exist. Yeah, but I am defining myself, I'm honored that, let's say at that table, you're saying, I'm honored to be representing United States of America. The moment you attack or deny, so then you're also insulting that person who has that connection to world's largest power. Okay, and let's not get into politics now, maybe not. But the idea is that here, when I am rejecting oneness of God, and when I'm ungrateful to God, I'm also insulting the creatures, because I'm telling them, you aren't message bearers from an eternal, powerful, generous creator. You just popped up, and I like you. I might say, I like you. This is so cute. And everything.
You just happen to be. I can do whatever I want to you. I have no respect for you.
Or even
unless I like you.
Even if I take good care of this person, even if that person who attacked, or maybe you're very proud of your university, you're from Harvard, and the person says Harvard is the worst university, or it doesn't exist. All of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I am a dean at Harvard, and they take good care of you, and they say, oh, you're so nice. You think you are from Harvard. There's no such. They just deny that part, and they say, we're nice, have this food. They might be treating you okay, but still they're insulting you. So similarly, I could be insulting the creatures around me as valueless, meaningless.
And not only one creature. If I have that stand towards one, I am actually, that crime, that attitude is reflecting on all creatures, past, future, everything. So you will say, but it's just an attitude. I just lived like in this world for 80 years. Yes, but the attitude was a denial of the meaning and purpose and the value, the sacred messages of all the creation. What we see and what we don't see, the past and the future, everything. Can you imagine how huge? Imam Nursi explained this in details in other places. That's why what it means. He says, why is shirk such a grievous sin? Why is it such a crime? Because, of course, there is this existential relationship with the world, and there is once we have this relationship with the world, then lots of oppression and transgressions and are actually fruits and consequences of this attitude. So there are degrees, of course, but you can see how it looks so small. It's just me, a small, tiny human being having an attitude. Yes, but this attitude has an effect, as far as I'm concerned, towards, just because someone, let's say in Israel's example, denied that country, it doesn't make the country disappear, but it doesn't absolve the person of his delusion. And he's actually, with that attitude, he's actually insulting all the people in that country, saying you don't exist. Here, it's like the meaning side of things, the purpose aspect of creation doesn't exist. They all they happen to be there. Their true value suddenly all disappears with that stand. They have value only as much as I give them. Can you imagine how degrading, devaluating this attitude, this relationship is to the rest of the creation? And to themselves too, but like they're free to do whatever they want to do to themselves, they think, but they don't realize that it has a consequence on all the rest of being and existence. And it's saying it's not only that, it's also the person is misusing. By doing that, they are also misusing. So because it's a relational, there is the whole being and existence, and there is the tools that we have to perceive and relate to the world. Those faculties were not given to you for that purpose. So it's saying you are not only offending the whole creation, but you are misusing by means of misusing the faculties given to you. And now it's saying those faculties, do you think they were given for this and this? No, they were given. And now we will be told what they were given for. So you see, he's going from the creation, the beauty and the meaning in creation. Those meanings and beauty relate to the beautiful names of God, to God. So there is an abstraction. And now, and the relationship was me seeing things in general in the outer world, and then realizing what's going on within me. And now there is a deeper going inside, because now I realize that I am perceiving all these things through some faculties that are with me. So the level of consciousness in this analysis is really following a higher level of consciousness. Or making us realize things, so that the more we realize what's going on, the more we become aware of what we were unaware of before, because we use those faculties without even realizing, especially when we are in a state of disconnection. We take it for granted. That's because we identify with our faculties. We identify with our body. Like the tools, we are not aware that they are tools. That's why we don't use them. It's all consciously. Unconsciously, it's as if everything is confused. We don't have a clear sense of identity. That's why we start with, like in the Quran also, we're told there is a nafs al-ammara, the evil commanding soul, when we have wants and desires, and we are not aware that this is a desire, this is a want. I may decide to fulfill it or not. I have to check whether I want to do this or not. This desire may be just an addiction, maybe just a bad habit, may not fulfill the purpose of my life. When we are at that level of total, we identify with those desires, that's the lowest level of human soul consciousness. And then that needs to be cultivated. We become aware that there are some desires that are not always good. We start feeling guilty about things, feeling bad about things. Then it becomes a nafs al-lawama and things like that. But you see that how it's getting now. It's telling us you have faculties. All those things you were experiencing in the outer and inner world, it was not just done like that. It was, I've been equipped with all kinds of very sophisticated faculties. And do you think you can just use them as you want? Because we are not even aware that we are using them. We think that's me. I read this 11 word like many years ago, more than a decade ago, and I had not had the opportunity to read it again from beginning to end, but I remember that I was very, it was like a breakthrough for me. I loved the 11 word, the 10th and the 30th, the 29th and the 30th. They're key words. Words here is the the name of this treatise is called the 11th word.
So how about we read a little bit more, and we may not be able to unpack fully due to time, but at least we read and we start talking about, there's another parable coming up.
We can read first the paragraph where it says, "Oh, my senseless soul and foolish friend, do you suppose?" And then we can maybe read the first and second.
You know, we did this, we read this the last 2 times, but we never got to the parable. So I was thinking maybe we read the parable too, and then
Okay.
get that
Yeah, the parable is actually quite
easier.
Because it's simple, it's easier to follow. Yeah, good. Even if we don't discuss anything, it will stay with us as food to reflect on, inshallah. Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So Sarah is kindly willing to continue to read, inshallah. Do you want to start from here? Do you suppose? Or in the beginning of paragraph, doesn't matter.
Do you suppose the sole aim of the delicate and subtle senses, the sensitive faculties and members, the well-ordered limbs and systems? It's so funny, I'm reading this for the 3rd time and I swear it's new every time. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff that we're using that I'm not even aware. The well-ordered limbs and systems, the inquisitive feelings and senses included in the machine of your life, is restricted to satisfying the low desires of the base soul in this fleeting life? God forbid. There are 2 main aims in their creation and inclusion in your essential being. The first consists of making known to you all the varieties of the true bestower's bounties and causing you to offer him thanks. You should be aware of this and offer him thanks and worship. The second is to make known to you, by means of your faculties, all the sorts of manifestations of the sacred divine names manifested in the world, and to cause you to experience them. And you, by recognizing them through experiencing them, should come to believe in them. Thus, man develops and is perfected through the achievement of these 2 basic aims. Through them, man becomes a true human being. Look through the meaning of the following comparison and see that the human faculties were not given in order to gain worldly life like an animal. For example, someone gave one of his servants 20 gold pieces, telling him to have a suit of clothes made out of a particular cloth. The servant went and got himself a fine suit out of the highest grade of the cloth and put it on. Then he saw that his employer had given another of his servants 1,000 gold pieces, and putting in the servant's pocket a piece of paper with some things written on it, had sent him to conclude some business. Now, anyone with any sense would know that the capital was not for getting a suit of clothes, for since the first servant had bought a suit of the finest cloth with 20 gold pieces, the 1,000 gold pieces were certainly not to be spent on that. Since the second servant had not read the paper in his pocket, and looking at the first servant, had given all the money to a shopkeeper for a suit of clothes, and then received the very lowest grade of cloth, and a suit 50 times worse than his friend's. His employer was bound to reprimand him severely for his utter stupidity and punish him angrily. O my soul and my friend, come to your senses. Do not spend the capital and potentialities of your life on pleasures of the flesh and this fleeting life like an animal or even lower. Otherwise, although you are 50 times superior with regard to capital than the highest animal, you will fall 50 times lower than the lowest. O my heedless soul, if you want to understand to a degree both the aim of your life and its nature, and the form of your life, and the true meaning of your life, and its perfect happiness, then look, the summary of the aims of your life consists of 9 matters.
Shall we read them, or shall we?
Yes, let's read them and then we can stop. So we have some further to reflect on, inshallah, during the week.
The summary of the aims of your life consists of 9 matters. The first is this: to weigh up on the scales of the senses, put in your being the bounty stored up in the treasuries of divine mercy, and to offer universal thanks. The second, to open with the keys of the faculties placed in your nature the hidden treasuries of the sacred divine names. The third, to consciously display and make known through your life in the view of the creatures in this exhibition of the world, the wondrous arts and subtle manifestations which the divine names have attached to you. The fourth, to proclaim your worship to the court of the Creator's dominicality, verbally and through the tongue of your disposition. The fifth, like on ceremonial occasions, a soldier wears all the decorations he has received from his king, and through appearing before him, displays the marks of his favor towards him. This is to consciously adorn yourself in the jewels of the subtle senses, which the manifestations of the divine names have given you, and to appear in the observant view, of the pre-eternal witness. The sixth, to consciously observe the salutations of living beings to their Creator, known as the manifestations of life, and their glorifications of their Maker, known as the signs of life, and their worship of the bestower of life, known as the aims of life, and by reflecting on them to see them, and through testifying to them, to display them. The seventh, through taking as units of measurement the small samples of attributes, like the partial knowledge, power, and will given to your life, it is to know through those measures the absolute attributes and sacred qualities of the all-glorious Creator. For example, since through your partial power, knowledge, and will, you have made your house in well-ordered fashion, you should know that, Isra, can you scroll down, please? Thank you. For example, since through your partial power, knowledge, and will, you have made your house in well-ordered fashion, you should know that the Maker of the palace of the world is its disposer, and powerful, knowing, and wise to the degree it is greater than your house. The eighth, to understand the words concerning the Creator's unity and Maker's dominicality, uttered by each of the beings in the world in its particular tongue. And the 9th, to understand through your impotence and weakness, your poverty and need, the degrees of the divine power and dominical riches. Just as the pleasure and degrees and varieties of food are understood through the degrees of hunger and the sorts of need, so you should understand the degrees of the infinite divine power and riches through your infinite impotence and poverty. The aims of your life, then, briefly, are matters like these. Now consider the nature of your life. Its summary is this.
Shall we keep going, Yamina Hojam? This will go.
Only one paragraph. It's an index, and then we can stop there.
Now consider the nature of your life. Its summary is this. It's an index of wonders pertaining to the divine names, a scale for measuring the divine attributes, a balance of the worlds within the universe, a list of the mighty world, a map of the cosmos, a summary of the vast book of the universe, a bunch of keys with which to open the hidden treasuries of divine power, and a most excellent pattern of the perfection scattered over beings and attached to time. The nature of your life consists of matters like these.
Very dense. And when you read the original, you will find lots of words that are from the Quran, and you can go back. Usually it's refers to an ayah. Sometimes it's also not an ayah, and hadith like before.
Can I just say that I love, like each week, I just feel like there's something to do and there's some work to do. And then as new moments come, I'm like, oh, what a regression. Like I fell off. And then I feel like each week there's just this beautiful repetition in new words and new ease. And it just flows like it's still growth and it's still progression and it's not actually regression at all. And the way the Quran is the same, like it's the same message presented in a new way with new words, all connected. And it's just so, it just feels like really good medicine. It feels so gentle and nice and kind. It's not like, oh, I messed up, I wasn't able to. This is just, the repetition is just so sweet, especially because it's in such a step-to-step format. It just, I feel like it just takes us from wherever we were and just takes us to the next step. It's just very nice.
Alhamdulillah.
I wonder if we could just take a couple minutes to talk about the parable, or should we?
I think like moms, they always feel when their kids are growing, or when you believe in someone and they're not using their faculties that you know they have to meet their potential, like, you know, moms, parents, they like, you know, you sort of like, do you realize what gifts you have? Like, is this what you want to do with all of these gifts? Like, so can you imagine, like, and these are gifts that we are very narrow-mindedly, like, you know, focusing on, whether it's intelligence or like, you know, or health or like, you know, or very, very, very minimal or like lineage or whatever it is. And then like, you know, look what gifts we have. Like, you know, so can you imagine when angels are upset with us? Like they're really upset with us because it's like, look at, like, you know, look at all what you've got and none of you is able, like, are you serious? Like, is this what you're gonna do with all of this? So I like I like, it made it easy to understand, like the parable.
And the funny thing is, the second person, he gets even a worse suit because I guess the shopkeeper, when he sees that he's willing to put $1,000, he's all his money. The other one with 20 gold pieces got it, you know. And yet we have so much.
He knew the value of it. Like he knew the value. This is 20 gold pieces. This is like what I'm getting for what I'm giving. Like there was an exchange, but the other one is like, you know, doesn't know the value of what he has. He's like, he's
Can be
not
cheated.
even,
Yeah,
he's not even thinking about it. It's like, just like, you know, you know what, when the kids were young, I remember this, like if they had like, you know, in Egypt, like something worth 5 cents left in their pocket, they say, how do we spend this? Like, you know, they just want to spend it. Like the goal is to spend it. They don't care what they're getting. And they would buy things, like when we go in the summer, things that are worthless. But their goal was just to spend the money. Like I could get them something that's far much better, like if they would involve me, with far much less money. But their goal wasn't to buy something of value. Their goal was to spend the money. That was it. And that I could never understand. Like it used to bother me. It's like, and you feel like there's like electrical waves if they have money, like it's something that pricks them. It's like, spend it. But we're doing the same. Like now I can see how this is what we're doing. Like, you know, we have something, it's just spend it. Doesn't matter what you're going to spend it in. Just go ahead and spend it. Like, which is exactly what my kids did. Like I was upset at them. I should be upset at myself.
And then we say, and then some people say, like, we're animals, you know, like they reproduce, they eat, they find shelter, so we do the same. And you're like, but why do you have such a fine taste? Why aren't you just enough with any corner that you put your head in? You want your house, even if big or small, you want it to look nice. You want it to be certain cleanliness. Why do you look for like that cat?
For order, for beauty, for harmony, for
friendship, for connection. That cat loses its kitten, in the next season there's no new kitten. Your kid is 50 and you're still worried about your kid. You're not the kid anymore, but you're so like, why do you have these sophisticated things? But he did like that. We look at animals, but they do the same. They reproduce and they eat and they have a shop. Yeah, but you have instructions in your pocket. Instructions here, I think maybe we are given the fitrah.
Have the fitrah, the need to fulfillment, to achievement, and it's like in another treatise, maybe was it the 20th, where Imam Nursi says, look at when animals come very quickly, in few hours, few days, they know all they need for their life. They're already taught all that. But human being, it takes like 20 years, or almost 20 years, let's say, to figure out what life is about, and even walking and talking takes longer. So clearly, the others didn't come here to learn. Knowledge is not part. It's already given to them. Go and this is your duty. But human being is clearly different.
Yeah. So maybe are there any other comments as we're closing?
Assalamu alaikum. One thing I'm kind of laughing to myself. The part of the parable was where he doesn't read the paper, and I'm like, why wouldn't you read the paper? Like, what's going on here? So it was kind of just funny to me that was my reaction.
He's probably not aware that there is a paper in his that it's something meaningful in his pocket. It's like with us, we have all these needs, the need for happiness, for fulfillment, for peace, and we misread them. We think we already know what it means, so we don't feel the need to truly read and understand. I don't understand. Ask, what does it mean? No, we just take it for granted that I know what I mean, what I need, and that's why the Quran often is not a source of guidance for us, because we don't feel the need of guidance. We already know what we want in life, and it is disconnected with akhirah. We have everything we want in life, plus we are Muslims. They told us there is akhirah. We feel there must be something. We can't deny it because it makes sense at the same time. And so we ask, we pray and give charity and things, hoping that we will be given paradise in akhirah. But we have everything figured out in our life. So we don't read most of the time. We don't feel the need to read the list, because we got the list in our hand and we misread it. So we're not truly reading. And it's not only the list, we're like, the whole world is speaking to us. What do? We take it for granted that we know what it means. But if you stop, what does it mean? Why do we have this feeling? Or why do we have this need? And when the small kids ask those questions, we say, it's our way of saying, don't ask questions, just do it, and just go. You need to go to school, you need to get a degree, you need to get the best job, and then you need to go this and do this. And actually, if we carry on, and so why? There is no true purpose.
So Zahra, what did it remind you about yourself? Like, why did this stand out for you? It must have a relation to yourself. What is it?
I guess what I was thinking is, I mean, I'll have to reflect a little deeper on that. But I mean, my initial was just like, when someone's given a list, a list is an important thing, right? Even like, I wouldn't go grocery. If I made a list to go grocery shopping, I would pull out the list and look at it. Or if someone sent me on an errand and they gave me a list, like there's a purpose that they gave it to me. Why would I not like pick it up? It just seems very like neglectful. That's as far as I got. It was just kind of just a reaction. But yeah, I'm going to definitely think on that a little more.
And by that, the parable served this purpose. Its whole purpose was to show clearly that this is ridiculous what we're doing. We say, oh, cats do this too. Well, you're not a cat, other animals are like doing this. Yes, but you're more than that. You have other faculties. So actually that kind of shock or being
and that's why he takes the whole money to the shopkeeper, because he's not aware that what he's being given, and he's not aware that it is very valuable. So there are, as you said, it's very neglectful at different levels.
Mm-hmm. So alhamdulillah. So with that, shall we pause here? Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless you. And Jazakumullah khair, everyone else who joined us and who contributed as well. We will inshallah see you on Sunday afternoon. Our guest speakers for Sunday is Zahra, Chima, and Tisnia, and they will be presenting on their Quranic reflections. They'll do a duo, and they have some interactive plan. And the topic is beautiful names of God, living beautiful names of God. Inshallah, join us and invite those who might be interested, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. نستغفر الله نستغفر الله نستغفر الله العظيم الكريم الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم نتوب إليه سبحانه. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لله الفاتحة. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.